Hey everybody, I'm David Teicher, Chief Content Officer here with Brand Innovators, and I'm sitting down with Marci Raible of Campbell Soup Company, and we're going to talk about some of today's hottest topics and biggest trends before she heads out on stage at our Marketing Leadership Summit.
Perfect.
Awesome. So let's start with the big one.
Okay.
Talent.
Yes.
I mentioned before, talent is one of the topics that I talk about with our community, probably more than anything else at this point. As a leader in the marketing organization, one of your responsibilities, obviously, is to make sure that that organization is built out. And it really seems like every day there's a new specialty to account for, a new discipline, a new platform. And then you have, obviously, the conversations around attracting and recruiting and retaining talent. What is your philosophy when it comes to making sure that you have the right people in the organization?
Definitely, I think specialists and how we think about as an organization, generalists versus specialists, and knowing where you need those specialist skills and where you can get away with a generalist, I think is critical. And it really is a differentiator then when you're looking for the background and the skill set. I don't think on the client side that that's a place where you can actually learn to be a specialist. I do think you have to go deep in your area. And so I think that's what we look for with talent. I think the other thing is curiosity, because in today's world, particularly in marketing and marketing communications, it is ever changing. And so you have to be a person that just is naturally wired to want to keep learning and keep investigating and keep, peeling back the onion. And I think that is something that can't be taught. And so you can teach the skills, but that is just a way that you have to be wired. And I think that's a key thing. The biggest challenge, I think, with talent today is that work from home versus in the office dynamic, and how you work through that and really help people see the value of when you come together as a team and the magic that can happen in the room. We have a work from home 2 days a week, but in the office 3 days a week. So that becomes a really important part of the equation.
It's hard to build culture,
yes,
right, out of the office. So there's definitely pros and cons.
Yes.
And one of the things that we've talked about, which sometimes I've lost sight of, certainly, is when you're an earlier stage career employee, that opportunity to meet and network with more senior executives doesn't necessarily exist or exist to the same capacity when you're virtual. And for that upward mobility and to build those relationships, the office environment, I guess, helps a lot there.
Oh, definitely. And especially as you learn to present your work, too, and the feedback that you get, the unspoken feedback that you get when you're in the room with somebody versus just what you get from a screen.
Oh, yeah. It's not the same.
No.
Certainly.
No.
All right, cool. So I actually have one other question for you before we get into the lightning round. And you can tell me if we can cut that one out if you don't like it. But I'm curious of your thoughts. We talk about talent and building the organization, recruiting the right people and what you look for. But what about managing up? It's another one of these conversations that I have with some of the more senior levels in our community is what it takes and lessons learned in presenting to the CEO, to the board, especially when there are conversations around marketing as a cost center or a profit driver, and making sure that the case is made for the work that you're doing being key to the growth of the company, right? So do you have any lessons or advice for other marketers, other senior executives, for how they can make those cases to the board or the CEO to not necessarily justify, but convey the power and the importance of the work?
I think three things that I would say. First is kitchen table language, because I think a lot of us who work in this space, we have our own words and definitions, and there are the buzzwords that nobody knows what they actually mean. And so I think kitchen table language is always the best way. One of my bosses once said to me, the smartest person in the room who is the one who can make everybody understand. And so thinking of it that way, I think, is critically important versus hiding behind all the inside baseball language. The second thing, I think, is thinking about it as a journey, not as a one presentation and I've got to get it all out on the table in that one presentation. So how do you think about the series of conversations to have versus everything in one, I would say, is the second thing. And then the third thing is there's also an evolution, because particularly in CPG, these leaders came from marketing, but it's very different today than when they were in marketing. And so how do you make sure you actually take the time to re-educate them on what it looks like today?
I love it. And I love the journey too, right? Because I think sometimes we feel like we have to make the case right now, but maybe it's better to put the right pieces into place and take them on that journey. So I love that.
I mean, you think about when you build a program, right? You think crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
So how do you think the same thing as you bring people along with you?
The same thing, right? External and internal, it works also.
Exactly.
Okay, now we'll get into kind of the lightning round. Okay. So let's go with like the trends first. I mean, we're at the beginning of the year, right? It's January of 2023, crazy. Are there any industry trends or kind of topics that are really on the top of your mind that either are driving some of the work that you're doing or just something that you're watching as far as those industry trends go?
Yeah, I think one thing for us is that pulse of culture, right? And everybody talks about wanting to be a brand that, is part of culture and lives in culture. And so for us, culture really means food culture. And so how we think about that and keep a pulse on it is critically important. So I think that will not slow down. The power of influencers, I think, will continue. And I'm interested in seeing how influencers actually evolve over the course of the next 12 months. It's not static. So, nano, macro, on all of the areas in between. I'm excited to see where that goes. And then the third, I think, is just the continued maturation of streaming with Netflix and Disney coming into it. I think it's always great when you get new players into the mix because it's going to shake things up a little bit. So even as consumer behavior continues to grow in that space, I think those new players are going to just make it exciting.
I know you said you didn't really look at the questions, but those were cultural relevance is one that really, the streaming wars, and again, right, like you're saying with Netflix, and as that place continues to mature, I mean, Netflix now has fitness videos with Nike. I mean, there's so many interesting opportunities for brands to really get involved now that those doors have opened. So very cool. I love it. And the influencer space, I tend to agree. The micro influencer is really, or whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. When you're too big, are you really influencing anybody at that point, right? So we'll go two more quick.
Okay.
AI and artificial intelligence. Yeah. Again, one of these big industry buzzwords. There's a lot of hype around it. Are there practical applications and uses that you're seeing today? Is this something that you're thinking maybe more longer term? What's your take on AI for the marketing industry?
Yeah, we were actually an early entrant into using AI. We were one of IBM Watson's first partners when they introduced AI, I think back in 2016. And so we used it with weather and recipes. And so how you think about different cooking behaviors based on what's happening with the weather was in first place for us. We've continued to use AI in that aspect. So I think there are definitely practical uses for it. Are we going to use it for, writing our copy? Maybe as an input or a guide? I don't know that it can actually recreate creativity in the same way that humans can.
I hope not. For all of our sakes.
Exactly.
So I love that. And so last one, same idea, same question, but around the metaverse.
Yeah.
Right. Again, the last year, 2 years, and Web3 in general, NFTs, crypto, and the metaverse. I mean, if you talk to some people, you think we'd all be living in virtual reality right now, and but maybe there was a little bit of a coming back to earth moment over the last few months. But so I'd love your take on what that opportunity really is like. Is that for our industry, and especially when it comes to investing, are you looking to invest more in these metaverse experiences, or is it more long term? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as marketers, we have to be testing these new places as consumers go there. We need to know how our brands show up and how our brands can show up. I think at the end of the day, though, the way you approach it still has to be the same as any other media space, right? Is it authentic to your brand? And, is your consumer there, and can you be authentic to your brand? We did an NFT around our label redesign for Condensed. We thought we had a natural connection because of art, and it was, the modern art gallery. And so it was a really interesting way for us to bring our redesign to life and really make it matter in today's world. And so testing in that way where it can be authentic, I think is critical, but I think you have to apply you can't just follow it blindly. You have to apply the same tenet that you do for any other media type.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. You're due on stage in just a minute. So thank you so much, Marci. Again, I'm David with Brand Innovators, and we'll hear more soon.
Thank you.